Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. This webinar is being presented by the California Department of Education's Early Education and Nutrition Fiscal Services Unit in the Fiscal and Administrative Services Division. We are also known as EENFS. My name is Kate Washington, and I'm a manager in the EENFS unit, overseeing the California Preschool Accounting Reporting Information System, or CPARIS. And I'm joined today by ENFS fiscal analyst Kiana Slaughter and Jennifer Chacon, who will be providing some important updates on fiscal year 26-27 reporting and support documentation requirements for California state preschool programs pursuant to Management Bulletin 2606. So we have disabled the chat box for participants, although the staff that are monitoring may use this feature to share links with you there throughout the presentation. And we're committed to being as responsive as possible, but we may not be able to answer all of your questions. So we ask that you utilize the Q&A feature to submit questions throughout the presentation. And please include as much detail as possible before you hit the submit button. And at the end of the presentation, I will be facilitating a live Q&A session where I'll go over some of the questions that we're seeing in the chat, some of the frequently asked questions that have come through during the session, or we may call on participants who've raised their hand. If we aren't able to get to your question, we may reach out to you after. We also may use the questions to develop some frequently asked questions that we will post on our website. And now I'll turn it over to your presenters for this webinar.
Thank you, Kate. Good afternoon. My name is Kiana Slaughter. Topics to be discussed in today's webinar are contract reporting changes pursuant to Management Bulletin 2606, the enrollment attendance and fiscal support documentation submitted with CPARIS reports. We'll cover the support documentation requirements along with some general examples. And lastly, we will provide an overview on how to submit how to submit the support documents and stay in compliance before heading into a Q&A session. Reporting requirements. Let's first discuss the changes to contract reporting beginning July 1st, 2026. Per the fiscal year 26-27 contract terms and conditions, and also referenced in Management Bulletin 2606, the California Department of Education, CDE, will require contractors to submit support documentation electronically with each enrollment attendance and fiscal report submitted in CPARIS. For California State Preschool Program, CSPP, contractors on clear contract status, this will be a quarterly requirement. For contractors on conditional or provisional status, this requirement will be monthly. Contractors who are not required to report monthly, but who choose to do so, must submit support documentation for each report they certify. We will cover the required documents along with examples in the next couple of slides. The purpose of this new reporting requirement is twofold. First, CDE will use this information for contract compliance purposes, including to ensure that data reported in the California Preschool Accounting Reporting Information System, also known as CPARIS, used for CSPP reimbursement and aligns with support documentation provided. And second, CDE can verify or identify where technical assistance may be most beneficial as the CSPP transitions to a new reimbursement model. Support documentation. As stated in Management Bulletin 2606, contractors are to submit the following documentation that supports the enrollment, attendance, revenue, and expenditures reported to the contract for each reporting period. The first item is the enrollment and attendance register that summarizes all certified enrollment and attendance reported to the CSPP contract. The most common example of this document is Form CD 9400. We'll show an example of one in the coming slides. The second support documentation required is the general ledger that includes all revenue and expenditures reported to the CSPP contract for the report period. For contractors serving multiple programs, contractors may choose to only submit the sections that reflect all CSPP-related transactions. The last item is the financial document that summarizes all revenue and expenditures reported to the contract. A common example would be a profit and loss statement or balance sheet, although this could be another document that summarizes all revenue and expenditures being reported in CPARIS. Let's first discuss the enrollment and attendance register requirement. As stated previously, the enrollment and attendance register summarizes all certified enrollment and attendance reported to the CSPP contract. The screen here displays the various documents that are used to determine the total days of enrollment and days of attendance. This chart illustrates how enrollment and attendance source documents feed into the CSPP enrollment, attendance, and fiscal reports submitted to the CDE via CPARIS. Source documents include the Notice of Action, which determines the certified time-based category. Then we have the sign-in and sign-out sheet, which determines a child's days of attendance. And then we have the Best Interest Day tracking log, which tracks and verifies the child doesn't exceed the total best interest days allotted for the fiscal year. All of these feed into the enrollment and attendance register or CD 9400, which is the bridging document. The enrollment and attendance register or CD 9400 collects data from all of these source documents and compiles that data to be transferred to the CSPP enrollment and attendance report in CPARIS. With enrollment now becoming a limit to which CPARIS is being reimbursed, it is extremely important to ensure that all enrollment and attendance source documents are accurate. Now let's outline the enrollment and attendance register requirements. The enrollment and attendance register must display the reporting period, the reporting period date. We'll see this illustrated in the example on the next slide. The days of enrollment documented on the register must align with the enrollment reported in CPARIS, and the days of attendance must also align with the attendance reported in CPARIS. Let's look at an example of an enrollment and attendance register. This example, we're using the CD 9400. This example records the days of enrollment and attendance for every child enrolled in the program, which reconciles to the sign-in and sign-out sheet. Towards the middle, we see the month associated with the enrollment and attendance information. This should align with the report that is being submitted in CPARIS. We won't go into great detail on the definitions of days of enrollment and days of attendance, but in summary, every day a child is enrolled, per their notice of action is a day of enrollment, and then every day a child is present or has an excused absence is a day of attendance. On this example, for the month of September, this agency had 3 children enrolled. The CD 9400 summarizes each child's daily enrollment and attendance and then provides the total days of enrollment and days of attendance for the agency. On the far right of the example, we have the total days of enrollment of 63 days and days of attendance as 62. This should reconcile with what is being reported as the total days of enrollment and total days of attendance on the September report in CPARIS. This is just a simple example. Contractors can create their own CD 9400 or use a version that is generated by the agency software. However, any version must contain all required fields such as the key identifying information, which is the agency name, the site, and the month, and the certified signature and the enrollment and attendance information that reconciles to the certified CPARIS report. Next, we will go into the general ledger requirement. On this screen, you'll see a diagram illustrating how different fiscal data sources flow into the general ledger. Source documents such as the cost allocation plan, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and family fee receipts. These all feed into the internal systems, including the general ledger. Contractors should think about the flow of the process at your agency to ensure that the data being reported is accurate. There should be checks and balances prior to the information being entered in the general ledger and subsequently transferred to the enrollment, attendance, and fiscal report in CPARS. Now let's outline the general ledger GL requirements. The GL must display the correct reporting period dates for the report being reviewed. The GL data can either be cumulative or represent data only for the current period. So for example, for quarterly September reports, the GL should reflect transactions from July 1st through September 30th. For quarterly December reports, the GL can either reflect transactions from July 1st through July 31st, or the current period, October 1st through December 31st. The GL total must be equal to or greater than the amount reflected in the corresponding financial document also submitted for the reporting period. So here's an example of the top section of a GL that would meet the requirement. On this slide, you will see the GL submitted references the agency's name, Osh Child Care, the fiscal year of 26-27, and the reporting period for September. As we went over in the previous slide, while this is a GL for September, you will see the transactions listed that date back to July 2026. Below that is the start of the transactions for the reporting period. So GLs can be lengthy, and we are only showing the beginning. At the bottom of the GL would be a transaction total, which should be equal to or greater than the financial document. Now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Jennifer Chacon.
Hello, thank you, Kiana. My name is Jennifer Chacon. Now let's go into the last requirement, the financial document. If you remember, the financial document summarizes all revenue and expenditures being reported in CPARS. On the screen, you'll see a diagram illustrating how different fiscal data sources flow into the report. Everything begins with the source document, cost allocation plan, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and family fee receipts. Those feed into your internal systems, including the general ledger. From there, the information is compiled into the final report form with additional data from the financial document. As you think about this process in the context of your own agency, it's important to consider the flow of information and the internal controls in place. There should be checks and balances before data is entered into the enrollment, attendance, and fiscal report in CPARS. For example, your fiscal director might have a process for regularly reviewing ledger entries to ensure expenses are coded and categorized accurately before the reports are entered and certified. For fiscal staff, it's crucial that every entry in the general ledger or CPARS reports can be traced back to its original source. If your agency uses a cost allocation plan, that's another layer to be mindful of, since it affects how expenses are distributed and reported. Now let's outline the requirements for the financial document. The financial document, such as a profit and loss or balance sheet, must clearly display the reporting period date. This allows us to confirm that the document aligns with the reporting period being reviewed and supports the information submitted in CPARS. Similar to the requirements of the GL, the financial document provided can be cumulative or represent only the current period. The revenue amount shown on the financial document must match the revenue amount reported in the CPARS revenue section. Also, the reimbursable expenses amount shown on the financial document must match the amount reported in CPARS reimbursable expenses section. This helps ensure that the financial data submitted in CPARS is accurate and supported by the agency's accounting records. On this slide, we have an example of a financial document, such as a profit and loss statement or balance sheet, that can be used to support the information reported in CPERS. First, on the financial document, we can locate the reporting period, which is displayed here as September, which corresponds to the reporting period being submitted in CPERS. Next, we identify the revenue, fees for non-certified children. This amount should match with the amount that is entered in the revenue section on the fiscal tab. Also, we can locate all the reimbursable expenses for the reporting period and the total expenses amount. The total expenses amount should match the amount reported in the reimbursable expenses section on the fiscal tab. In this example, the financial document provides the source information needed to validate the revenue and expense amounts reported in CPERS. Our goal is to ensure that all reported figures are accurate, supported by documentation, and consistent across all submitted records. Here is another example of what a financial document could look like. And maybe at your agency, it looks different than both of these, but this is what is expected when uploaded. In the top right corner again, you can see also the reporting period displayed, September. The financial document does not have any revenue. Next, list all the reimbursable expenses and then the total expenditures line, which should match the amount reported in the reimbursable expenses section on the fiscal tab. Now, when submitting the required documentation, the support documents must be uploaded in CPERS. The report cannot be certified without the required documents, meaning if you create a report, CPERS will not allow you to certify the report until the required documents are uploaded. When reports are revised, contractors will have the option of selecting documents uploaded with their initial report or uploading new documents. For example, if you're revising only the enrollment and attendance tab, you can upload a new enrollment and attendance register to support the changes and select the previously uploaded general ledger and financial summary documents. Contractors will be notified via listserv when July reports are available in CPERS. We anticipate the user manual also being updated in the coming weeks. Let's take a look in CPERS to see how to upload the required documents. Most of you are familiar with the structure of the CPERS reports. The enrollment and attendance, fiscal, and finalized calculation tabs. Our CPERS team has added a new tab, documentation, which you can see on this slide. The tab is where the required documents will be uploaded. You would click the new documentation tab, then you will click select new, and the upload link will appear, allowing you to choose a file to upload for each document type. Again, the report cannot be certified without the required documents being uploaded. If you're submitting a revised report, you will see an option to select previously uploaded documents that have been submitted or upload new revised documents aligning with the changes made in the report. Contractors are able to download and view the documents before and after the report is certified. Documents can be removed and new documents uploaded until the report is certified. Once the documents are uploaded, they are automatically saved to the system. There is no additional save button as there is on the other tabs. The file name displayed here will be the user's file name. Once the analyst processes the report, the file name will be saved under CDE naming convention with the original file name in the parentheses. Once the required documents have been uploaded, you can then proceed to the Finalized Calculations tab to verify report data. As before, all tabs other than the documentation tab must be saved in order to allow the data to summarize correctly. Once this is done, the report will change to draft status and then can be certified, provided there are no errors. If the submitted supporting documentation does not align with the data reported in the enrollment, attendance, and fiscal report, the report will not be processed until all supporting documentation are aligned with the data reported in CPERS. Each document will have an associated status, allowing the user to see if a document has been processed or rejected. Additionally, comments from the fiscal analyst will be viewable. Failure to submit supporting documentation that aligns with the data reported may result in future apportionment payments being withheld until acceptable supporting documentation is received. On a quarterly basis, CDE will also randomly sample reported information and may request additional documentation from the contractor. This process is intended to provide contractors with targeted technical assistance to help contractors adhere to reporting requirements and maximize their contract earnings.